Namaste. Welcome everybody. We will continue to speak about self-awareness during this satsang, and I will specifically refer to the general guidance of some self-awareness practices, and I will give some examples of this. And also, if we'll have enough time, we'll speak about the swing principle, the pendulum principle, about the psychological flexibility and spiritual centeredness. Before starting, just an overview, and even before, a short recapitulation of the previous satsang. What we see now in the world is less fear at the global level. We don't need to be clairvoyant or to have premonition to see this. It is a fact, and these are good news. We are actually praying for this. So it's a matter of feeling this psychological global field, which in metaphysics is named egregor. This global field, psychic field, is named an egregor. And it is relevant to be able to see that it's less fear. You remember in the first weeks of this pandemic, I said there is so much fear in the world. It's like instead of love is in the air, we can say fear is in the air. And now it's not. Now it's much less. And I hope you can observe this. And it's relevant to acknowledge this because we can see in this way how our actions and decisions depend on this global change or not. So how we are just blindly following that trend or another simply because of our sleepiness, or how we can act with a detachment and just observing what is happening there. So anyhow, we can learn from these psychic fields. It is also a transmission of subtle information, and we can be aware of it. It's not about just ignoring, it's not about denying it. And we learn. So we can say that the effect and in a way the purpose of self-awareness is to give us a completely different idea of the things we know best, or we think we know best. So the purpose of self-awareness, once again, is to give us a completely different idea of the things we know best. Yes, going beyond these dogmatic beliefs. There is a very beautiful Sufi story about how this kind of transmission can be done in a very subtle way. It is said that there was once a merchant who kept a parrot imprisoned in a cage, and when wanted to visit India for a business trip, he just said to his bird, "I am traveling to your homeland. Can I give any message to your relatives there?" "Simply tell them," said the parrot, "that I am living here in a cage." When the merchant returned, he said to the parrot, "Well, I'm so sorry, I have to tell you that I found your relatives there in jungle, your wild relatives, and I said them that you are caged here, and it was too much for one of them. It was so shocking. So as soon as that parrot heard the news, he just dropped from that branch and fell down on the ground, just died. He died most probably because of grief." immediately as the man was speaking this, the parrot in the cage also collapsed and lay inert on the floor of his cage. Very sad about this, the merchant took it, tried to see if he can do something. He finally took it out to bury it because he thought he is dead. But as soon as he was outside, the parrot just flew away. And this story tells us how this call of the sacred can come in so many unknown ways. So how some challenges or some difficult situations can give us a message beyond the unknown, or something that other people cannot understand or wouldn't understand. Even though it is there, the message is there. Now, a brief recapitulation of the previous satsang, because we will go in a kind of continuation. We discuss how self-observation leads to self-awareness, self-observation meaning the observation of the breath and all these different sensations still related at the personal level, which can lead to that pure awareness, to that awareness of the awareness itself. We spoke about that recollection, that way of creating a kind of summary of all our, or a general perspective of our being, like you would see yourself in the perspective of your whole life, and how we can do this practice of recollection. We use this term from the teachings of Saint Teresa of Avila, who said that all the energies of the soul are recollected back in the heart. So it's like a practice of centeredness and recollecting yourself, being yourself present, and how that practice can be done in the transition periods when you just wake up from sleep, and how this sense of flow is so important there, to observe that. And when it tends to drift away in dreams, and we come back to the flow itself. So such integration brought by a recollection of yourself is not just a rational experience. I said it's a devotional, integrative experience which gives us a sense of gratitude for life, a sense of gratitude for no reason and for all the reasons. The gratitude of being, which carries with it a larger presence. And this is recollection. You, this larger presence. So it's like we recollect ourselves, we recenter, entering this flow, but with no images or thoughts. And this will end to this pure I feeling, freed from any images, memories, just a me in its whole purity. And if we manage to keep this flow longer in our heart, this will bring self-awareness, which doesn't refer to ego or a personal story anymore. We spoke also about the teachings of the fish, and it was just related to that image of being on a shore of a river, relaxing, and suddenly seeing a fish leaping out of the water, glittering for a moment in the sunlight, and then diving back in the water with a graceful arch. So a moment of surprise, wonderment, joy, in which all my being is awakened. Yes, such an event is fascinating, and I will not forget it all my life. It's so present, it's so fascinating, it's so alive. Yet, even though it's so much intensity there, after that, now everything points to the silent I am. So I'll not remain in that excitement, agitation, but we can say metaphorically that the fish of sensation is falling down in the waters of the infinite ocean of pure awareness. So I have the sensation, and then is the excitement of chocolate, and then I am the stillness. We don't have to do anything. We don't need to stop the thoughts, the perception. It's rather a gracious integration. First is an integration. I am just collected in all that energies that are, all that excitement, and then a dissolution into that tremor of the heart, into that presence, no agitation, no thought, just an alive presence. Now, I'm going to speak a little bit further to bring even a kind of generalization of this, how we can develop a transformation of dissolution in perception. It's like a way of paraphrasing what Patanjali speaks in chapter 3, Sutra 9, Aphorism 9, in Yoga Sutra, this traditional text of yoga, aphorism of yoga. He speaks about Nirodha Parinama. Nirodha Parinama is literally the transformation of dissolution or transformation of cessation, which is a condition in which the subconscious mind is purified. So all our traumas, emotions, limitations, problems at the subconscious level, so not at the conscious level, but at the subconscious level, are limited, are simply eliminated by a tendency, by a, we can say, a longing towards stillness, towards dissolution. So it's a subconscious tendency which is named samskara nirodha, the subconscious tendency towards dissolution. And this method is applied in meditation, in Hridaya meditation, and in general in Jnana Yoga, in many forms of meditation. This is what we are applying, how we are acting. Yes? So it's a dissolution. Because we come and come again and again to that stillness. But this can be applied, so the same purifying act, the same purifying subconscious mind can be explored and revealed in connection with any human experience. Not only in meditation, but in our actual life. So in any act of perception, look for an immediate, spontaneous, so conscious and natural liberation of the perception from that personal experiencer, for that me with my story, with my filters, with my expectations and so on. So it's pretty much the same teachings of the fish, but now expressed in this perspective of Patanjali. It's just dissolving everything in an wonderment of being. It is an art of perception. We learn with this an art of perceiving. It's usually people tend to speak about a contemplative existence. Our existence becomes contemplative. We are walking, acting in a contemplative way. What does it mean? It means exactly this capacity of staying in intimacy with that neutrality, with that stillness. So we can say everything points to God, not as an image, but God as this stillness, sacredness, fascination. As when you see your lover for the first time. That recognition. So the act of self-awareness is an act of acknowledging the unlimited nature of our being. Thus, the perception doesn't refer to a me, myself, this personality, but to an infinite space, to an infinite stillness. While we are still acting or in that perception of the garden or walking in the forest. It is literally like seeing with the infinite space of your being. With all your being. You see with the eyes, yes, but at the same time is like seeing with all this stillness that we are. Seeing with the heart. Try it. Just try it now. It is a view that spreads like a blanket of serenity over our soul. When we say, I speak from my heart, for example, it's like our whole essence is condensed there, no? I'm speaking from my whole essence. And we want to express our very essence in what we say. We are totally truthful, totally honest, yes? So speaking from the heart means being totally truthful. The same now with an act of perception. Be totally truthful in perception. With the same honesty. I speak from the heart. I see from the heart. Thus, the limited perception leads to a perception with no object. Like, the gong dissolving, the sound of the gong dissolving into silence. Or the fish appearing and then disappearing. So initially we have an object, but then it's not about an object, it's about that silence, about that nothingness. Still the echo is there, but in a very subtle way. The limited perceiver, the limited me, starts seeing herself as infinite. It's like an aesthetic intuition, and more fundamentally is an openness to a sense of sacredness. Tolstoy said, we are everything and nothing, but we think that we are something. So we are everything and nothing, but we think that we are something. And such ways of perception helps us to open to this sense that we are everything and nothing. In terms of personality, of ego, is just this nothingness, just this transparency, which allows this totality, dropping this idea that we are something. Thus, the more we understand this sadhana, or this spiritual practice of self-awareness, the more it is settled rightly in our being and its pure meaning seen, the more it helps us to become self-aware. So, brings this awakening, honoring such moments. It's like a continuous feedback in faith, in this faith in wonderment, in this faith in something, because faith by definition is just trusting in the unknown. It's about surrender. And then the practice of self-remembrance, of being aware, radiates in our perceptions, in all that is happening, is like a projection of the center into the periphery, of this motionless mover, the center that moves everything, this heart, into the flow of things. So please remember and try to explore this sense of Nirodha Parinama, the transformation of dissolution, in perception. You have a perception and then you dissolve. Just in this stillness of being. It's like, it's more than hygiene of perceptions, of not, liberating from the attachments, craving, and all the limitations, but just bringing that. In that stillness is more than just a psychological hygiene, is opening us to this sense of sacred. Now I'm going to speak about some general guidelines of self-awareness practices and giving some examples. In general, there are some challenges in developing self-awareness, but understanding such challenges, we may learn many useful things and how to overcome them. More than this, we can take some steps in designing such self-awareness practices by ourselves. The topic is very important, since maybe the most important essential tantric texts, Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, the teachings about the consciousness of Shiva, the consciousness of the ultimate, is about this. So it's about exactly this, mostly about these circumstantial practices that point to this ultimate reality, to this self-awareness of our being. It is difficult to integrate self-awareness in our daily life, mostly for two reasons. First, we are not so accustomed with this pure presence in itself, with this intimacy of the pure I. We don't know what this ultimate center really means, what this reference point or support would really mean. And this first obstacle, this all spiritual thing is just a vague thing. This first obstacle is can be overcome by simply meditation, self-inquiry, Hridaya meditation. And what is revealed in such meditations is exactly this pure I feeling, and then that ineffable. So this would be the first challenge, which we have the remedy. Then the second challenge is that we are easily taken away by thoughts, sensations, feelings, and so on, and we forget to be present. The old habits, attachments will prevent this intuition of the real depth. One way of gradually eliminating the second obstacle is to practice such conjunctural practices or techniques. Here it's a kind of paradox, because while only a small amount of effort is usually needed for us to be attentive, mindful, for remembering, just a small amount of effort, yes? Remembering to make this tiny effort can be very challenging. So once again, while just a small amount of effort is usually needed to be aware, mindful, remembering to make that tiny effort can be challenging. Before going further, why being really present and what does it mean? Well, it's very simple, and we'll not elaborate now about this too much, but your lover, your friend is often telling you, please be present, which means drop all your stories, projections, imagination, wanting to just say what you think, and listen with your whole being. Listen with your heart, in that nirodha, in that dissolution of the ego, of the story. Yes? And ultimately, this is the whole point in spirituality, to be aware, to be present. This is the core of the teaching of Buddha, the awakened one, was about this awareness. Thus, we learn intimately that spirituality is not separated from life. It's exactly about this presence in which life is embraced in the most beautiful intensity, with that fascination of a child going into Disneyland, that tremor, that excitement, but recollected. So it's the excitement, it's not a passivity, it's not an inert condition, but all that vividness, no, brings a sense of me fully present. So try to figure it now. No? What means when I point to me, myself, me? If I'm fully aware, me. So such exercises can create a framework for acting in our daily life and even dealing with different situations in a way in which we didn't do before. It's a very helpful transforming element. And I'm going to give some guidelines about how we can approach such techniques, and we can learn many things about it, because as I said, the remembrance theoretically is easy, but to remember, to make that tiny effort, is important. We start like a description how such a technique will be. We use a method for making the mind oriented to an object, like the breath, for example, again and again. This is what we name a practice of mindfulness. So try to continue to be aware of your breath. While I'm speaking now, and try to continue to be aware of your breath while I'm speaking. Yes? So after a while, I will ask you if you are really aware of the breath, if you didn't forget. Because you'll see this is also a very important challenge. This lack of focus we are missing is not a big deal, no? To bring the awareness of the breath. And remembering now is like a commitment to be aware of the breath, yes? But this is not the end. This practice should lead us to a further state of recollection. So it's not just about following inhalation and exhalation, it's a way of finding myself. It's about me. It's a zooming out, that I am all these sensations, feelings, thoughts, this presence. No, I am present now, while I'm aware of the breathing. And even deeper into that pure I feeling, beyond any story, while I continue to breathe. So this awareness of the breath, which is continue, is just an example, because any conscious action can be used as a mindfulness exercise in this general sense, if it is associated with a proper attention. Now, for the sake of clarity, we will refer to 3 levels of this practice of self-awareness. So, the first level is the mechanics of this actual procedure. For example, breathing deeply. Or for another example would be passing a threshold. walking through a doorway. Whenever you walk through a doorway, you should remember to be self-aware. Yes, this is another example of such a method. So the mechanic of this, the breath, the passing in itself, is one stage. Yes. The second element, the second level, is the attention or the awareness that such gesture induces. We can name it mindfulness or self-observation. It is still personal, yes? You are conscious of that gesture. You are conscious that you enter the door. You are conscious that you are breathing. So the awareness, the attention is the second level. Then the self-awareness, the third level, would be that pure presence it points to. So this last part is only, it's only the relevant thing, so the only aspect that really matters. It is the moon we are pointing the finger to. No, it's like in that metaphor, the finger that points to the moon. It's not the finger that matters, but the moon. So such remembrance, you are breathing, you are aware, and then it points to this remembrance, this recollection, or to a being value, like love, or silence, or truthfulness. For example, you can practice for 1 week. You decide each time when you enter a new space, passing through a door, you just acknowledge love. And then another week you can acknowledge timelessness or space, infinite space. All these are like being values or pure attributes that are in themselves raised to this pure being. So a way of remembering or pointing to the same pure presence. Yes. So these three levels, the mechanic of the practice, the awareness of a gesture, like the awareness of the breath and so on, and then more than all this, the self-awareness, that pointing to something higher than just an awareness of a gesture or self-observation, that psychological observation. Yes? Now, the difference between the first level and the second level, the technicality of the exercise and the attention, the mindfulness we hope to induce by that practice, I hope is clear. And we should understand that the gesture itself, no matter how often is repeated, is different from the actual awareness of it. And already it's a good practice to contemplate and be aware of the difference between a gesture, how it feels when you are just mindlessly doing a gesture, breathing, and then how it feels when you become aware of this. So contemplate the difference between this. This is something which is emphasized a lot. In the Zen tradition, there is a beautiful story about a master who had a disciple who was supposed to become a teacher himself. And in a rainy day, after 10 years of such sadhana and practices, the disciple came to his master and to have a casual talk. And then the master asked him, you came here, where did you put your umbrella? To the left or to the right of your shoes? And the disciple was not able to answer. And the master said, well, you failed the test, you will not be able to become a teacher, you'll just have to continue with me for another 10 years. And the man started complaining, well, 10 years for such a small mistake? And the master simply answered, it's not a small or big mistake, you were simply not aware. So you see, this importance of making something mechanical, transformed in a conscious gesture. But we may say, so what? This is not in itself a spiritual attitude. What is, in the end, what is the point of being aware where your umbrella is? So again, while only a small amount of effort is usually needed to be attentive, mindful, remembering to make that effort can be problematic, or very problematic often. And it's good to do it, but this is just the second level. Now the third part, what the third part brings, it is not about being attracted to some beliefs or opinions, to open to this belief in God or something like this. The fact that you agree or even feel sometimes that you are not the body but a more general spiritual reality, so the fact that you believe this is not enough. This is the illusion that actually keeps so many people asleep. We imagine that if we now agree that our essence is eternal, and even if we think about it now, yes, this sense of eternity, we imagine that this is the actual reality which we experience. But we may miss this direct experience, which is not just thinking. Are you still aware of the breath? If not, come back. No problem. So the difference between thinking, imagining, and the genuine being is evident when, for a brief moment, we have such a vibrant and astonishing glimpse of that ineffable, which is so fulfilling and clear. When we have the whole perspective and everything is so obvious, we are sure that we are completely on this. It's so obvious. We are sure that we'll never forget it. And then we still forget it. Definitely we will not forget it as a memory, but then we forget it as that direct taste, as that freshness of truth. That's why we say that Tao cannot be grasped. I smile when some people come to me and tell enthusiastically that he discovered a strategy to stay constantly in the heart. I smile because there is no strategy. When disciple Joshua asked his teacher Nansen, what is the Tao, what is the way? The teacher replied, your everyday mind is the Tao. Are you still aware of the breath? The naturalness comes through effort. And this is a paradox I'm going to speak tonight as well. Therefore, because being self-aware tends to be too vague for some people and so easily forgotten, we can be supported by such different specific exercises, which still require an attention, like breathing, yes? But such formal practices are rather the finger and not the moon. And this is very important. They are definitely not the ultimate truth, not moral rules on how to live our life and so on. there is a risk to get caught up in just views and turn these technical practices into just teachings or instructions which seem to have an absolute character, which is not at all. Rumi has a very, very beautiful statement. He said, "You may have the magic ring, but you must be a Solomon, master of invisible powers, to make it work." So according to the Bible, Solomon had a magic ring. And Rumi says, you may have a magic ring. So such a magic practice can be accessible to you. But you must be a Solomon, a master of the invisible powers, to make it work. And how you can become such a master? By presence. Also, because I mentioned Rumi, and this will give us a taste of the beauty of such practices, or how these practices are pointing to something very special. There is a story which Rumi brings from the Bible about Zuleika and Joseph. It's a biblical story in which Zuleika is falling in love with Joseph, and Rumi's interpretation is very special because he said Zuleika loved him so much she concealed his name in many different phrases, the inner meaning known only to her. When she said the wax is softening near the fire, she meant my love is wanting me. Or if she said, look, the moon is up, or willow has new leaves, or the branches are trembling, or coriander seeds have caught fire, or the roses are opening, or the furniture is dusting, or the water carrier is here, or these vegetables are perfect. The clouds seem to be moving against the wind. Anything she praises, it's Joseph's touch she means. Any complaint is his being away. So the same is with such practices. We give them this supreme meaning of pure presence. Samsara and nirvana together. The phenomenal world and that sacredness. So you are breathing, but with this, it's a sacred meaning. It's like you are in love with reality, because you are in love with yourself, with His presence. Such practices can help us to see each instance like seeing a jewel in a place in which before you just saw something profane. Like just opening a door and then seeing something sacred. Behind anything, it's like this awareness shows you. An unlimited power of being. There is even a story, a real story, which is confessed by a Sufi master in Russia, where he speaks about a place in England, in Britain, in Birkenhead, in England, when a jeweler wanted to make people come to his shop. And because of this, he handed out 3,000 stones to people, just sending mails. They all look like real diamonds, but only 4 of them were real diamonds. All the others were glasses, just glass. So he explained in a letter given to each of them that there are 4 diamonds between these 3,000 stones, and whoever got a stone of any kind is invited to visit his jewelry store to find if that is just a piece of glass or is really a diamond. And out of these 3,000 people, only one woman actually turned back to the shop, and she was right, she had a genuine diamond, but all the rest of people thought they were all fakes, or they didn't come back anyhow. So if this happened even with a physical thing, we can imagine how easily we tend to ignore these diamonds of existence and not being open to them. But if the transmission happens when a teacher actually points her finger to the moon, we can easily see the moon. But the problem comes when the thing which the formal teachings, these formal religious or philosophical fingers are pointing, and then we are looking, instead of looking with the heart, we are looking with our mind, and we think that that moon, that ineffable, needs to be grasped. Indeed, for the mind, seems to be vague or inexistent. That doesn't exist for the mind. People try to look toward the moon, and it seems that there is nothing there. They go back to the finger, and the direction seems to be correct, but it seems that they simply cannot see what it's pointing at. And then it happens that many tend to get attached to the finger, and like attachment to a doctrine, philosophy or religion, concepts like God, attachment to a guru, and so on. And then it's happening that you try yoga, different methods, the guru will indicate, and at the beginning you totally believe in all this, but then somehow it doesn't work, and doesn't work the way you hoped, and you don't grasp anything there. It seems that there is nothing there, and then you may attach to the person who points to this kind of guru, hoping that only him can show you that. So it's another way of looking from the moon to a finger. Or the opposite would be just a skepticism of atheism or materialism. Now, as a parenthesis, even with an atheist, often the problem is not the absence of the heart, but I would say rather the absence of the head, in the sense of a real, clear, lucid intelligence. Some are just pretended, most of people are just pretended atheists, or better said, materialists, in the sense of denying transcendence. They just believe that they are atheists simply because they are pushed by their grandmother to go to a church when they were children and they didn't like. So out of a kind of trauma, which is just a psychological reaction. So you cannot come to atheism just because of a psychological reaction. Or simply, it happens also often, simply because they didn't bring into their focus of their wisdom this topic. So the declared atheist is usually somebody who excluded, who ignored this question about himself, about reality, not somebody who went into its depth and came to such a conclusion. Not to say, well, for 20 years I was just practicing contemplation, trying to understand the nature of me, and I came to this conclusion that there is no God or there is nothing transcendental. It's not happening like this. It's more of an exclusion, not as a consequence of pursuing with sobriety and depth this question, not just because you turn your back and ignore it. Otherwise, it's, we can say, just a metaphysical insensitivity, a callousness, rigidity. Yes? And this is what is happening with many atheists. It's simply because of not studying this, of not proceeding in this. Many people during retreats said, well, I came here as an atheist, and now I understand, and now it makes sense, everything, and so on. Of course, if we look and practice, something will be there. And it's not just about the time of the retreat, it's also about such special moments in our daily life. Now, such exercises, the awareness of the breath, can be very simple and may appear trivial or meaningless to the intellectual and sophisticated mind. We cannot really evaluate the efficiency of a practice just by hearing or thinking about it, but by applying it constantly. So don't judge from outside. Also, another idea, there can be a concern that such exercises can be efficient only for a short period of time, because even them can turn in a mechanical gesture without this awakening pointing power. But so this idea also comes, and some people are mentioning it, but I would say it's not a problem with the technique itself. It just shows that we are missing one of these two superior elements, either the attention, this mindfulness, or the associated meaning, the highest level. Yes? So we are not attentive enough when we are passing the threshold, or when we are breathing, or we are forgetting this link to the ineffable, to this stillness. So it's easy to point to the moon, to have that echo deep in our being. And as I said, it can be a point to pure love, to a self-remembrance. Me here now. What a miracle. Or a point to this sacred tremor of the heart, to this presence, aliveness, like the joy of a child in the Disneyland, yes? That tremor, excitement. Yes. Maybe you found such people in your life. I'm sure all of us. We had some meetings with some people who were really, really full of excitement in that sense of a heart alive. It's good to contemplate and learn from such people and how we can keep that aliveness. It's something, maybe, yes, people without knowing, they lost sometimes themselves in actions or thoughts, but that fire, that is so special. Also, so don't forget to come back to that connection again and again. An awareness exercise provides this opportunity to be self-aware, but always this quantum leap is our responsibility. When a practice seems to lose its magic, it just tells us to stop a little longer and recreate that connection between the gesture and its higher meaning. So again, We stop, we take a deep breath. And if that doesn't touch us as it used to, keep the pause longer. Bring this awareness with the breath, bring the awareness in the heart and stay longer. And open to that higher meaning, or let that happen. There is always so much sacred meanings passing through us that we do not realize this. Purified by our thoughts or obsessions and agitation and agendas, we begin to hear it, to see it with the heart. Often the novelty of a practice, it's true that generates in itself an increased attention. That kind of inherent focus of the mind is by itself an energy-inducing feature of the practice, which makes us more present. We become more alive simply because it's something new. We are doing something new. Here it's also an interesting thing. It's an emotional intensity which can be very efficient, and this is the reason for which many mystics prefer to create an intensity of tension. It's this intensity of attention that in itself releases high amounts of energy. Think about the flagellation of Saint Teresa of Avila, or Saint John of the Cross, or of Sufi willing, or dhikr, praying with the breath, or lovemaking in Tantra. From outside, flagellation seems a cruel method, but somehow they work, or they work for those people and show us the importance of such intensity of presence. Again, of course, they are just methods. They are just a finger. They cannot be the ultimate, and we cannot really appreciate their efficiency or evaluate their efficiency just according to their expression or their form. Of course, we may say, well, never flagellation, always Tantra and lovemaking. But it's not about ultimately, it's about waking up. And it's not just about attraction for something that is pleasant, but is just this genuine aspiration to wake up, no matter what. And the whole situation now brought this intensity, which created an opportunity for awakening. Beyond the hysteria, beyond the reactions, because people, go in just thoughts and projections. But beyond all this, it has a tension. It's something uncommon, which should be treated as shaking for awakening. So an adequate quantity of tension at the physical, intellectual, emotional level should be always there. It can be helpful for a practice. The self-awareness in itself, so this is an important aspect. The self-awareness, I am aware, and then it's a challenging thing, but the self-awareness will sublimate that tension. So it's not about running from something which you don't like, because in the end it's not about like or dislike, but it's about this self-awareness which sublimates that, gives a different meaning, and with that gives that sweetness of presence, that excitement of being, which is much relevant than the finger from where we pointed. Yeah? Yes? So we will sublimate thus, we transform that strain or tension into this tremor that supports and intensifies the pure presence, this aliveness. When it is still rooted in the personal will, attention, the mindfulness, at first feels that it takes energy. We need to be, very aware when we pass the threshold, whenever we are breathing. Yes? But so initially, it feels that it takes some energy of attention. We are not accustomed with it. But later on, when it becomes really a real self-awareness, it gives energy, enthusiasm, insights. So don't be just stuck or limited by the fact that practice requires a lot of energy or is disturbing a little bit. No, practice, because then with this sense of presence, something different will come. Of course, too much tension can activate too strongly these ego reactions, this automatic defense mechanism, which will grab all attention and making mindfulness very difficult. We are just stuck in that fear or condition. For example, try rhythmic breathing or being constantly aware of the breath when you are driving on an empty highway or in a crowded city, and try to see the difference. And this is what I'm speaking about. Again, you see, I'm referring to things in which it's important to practice. It's important to make this first step of self-aware or self-observation, which will bring us further to that sense of sacredness. Yes. Of course, there are also different ways of approaching to different people. Try to see where an exercise is relaxing and easy, and when it starts creating tension, reactivity, agitation, nervousness. And then, again, change the perspective. Try to sublimate or try to bring this in a different approach. Usually in normal exercises, that initial freshness will wear off and disappear after a while. It's somehow normal, we can say. It's a honeymoon. But the honeymoon is with the technique, but the life commitment is with the reality, is to the moon, to the reality, not with the technique. Again, we don't grasp just the technique. And instead of just abandoning the technique or modifying it, which is still a limited strategy. Why? Because it's still about the old mind patterns, running or just looking for what we like. Try to observe what specifically was lost. So why that freshness is not there, how that freshness is missing, and what and how can be reawakened. It's like recreating that magic ring. Such contemplations are so precious in reawakening love in a relationship, in recreating that magic, because it's the same way of being aware, of looking there, of observing this. And with these simple practices like the awareness of the breath, the freshness is much easier to learn. You make it deeper, longer. You give some time for dropping the identifications with the mind. And it's again there. So don't abandon such conjectural practices, but amplify the openness of their sacred meaning, to their sacred meaning, to their sense of stillness. For example, if the act of passing through a doorway is your anchor, stop at the threshold of a door till you are really aware. So you stop. Before entering a new space, you stay there. You stay for a while, 2-3 seconds, till that gesture becomes really a conscious, the freshness of that. You are dropping just the mind and you become, or the thinking mind, the rational mind, and you become really aware of what is happening there. Yes? So, the difficulty with exercises that require a certain way of acting and an attention as well, like this, is that the act can become conditioned, mechanical, and when this happens, there is a strong tendency for the mind to have a fantasy of being aware, of being attentive, instead of actually being attentive. It's just an imagination. We imagine that we are aware. This is also a challenge that we can have in such situations. We just the fact that we are thinking about something is not enough. So really stop. In a deeper meaning, let that stop echo till the depth of your being. Of course, we can emphasize and give more attention, according to the case, to some new practices or to old practices, to associate them with this self-awareness, to remember their real meaning. And continue in this way. Or another way of acknowledging also and playing with this, acknowledging the relativity of the finger, of the technique, is to consciously drop such a method for a while and start it later. So after you practice for 1 year and you were so much, attached of this, whenever I give an object to somebody, I remember that awareness, or whenever I pass a threshold, I become aware, drop it. Because it's not about that gesture. You drop any effort. And you may see that that echo still is there, but with no sense of I need to be in control of that. While this needing to be in control, still it's needed for a long period, as I said. But you can experience and you can drop it for a while and then start it later. You drop just the habit, the reaction, but keep the presence. Again, the taste of self-awareness that a technique carries in itself can make the practice more meaningful. It's like Rumi said, not only the thirsty seek the water seeks the thirsty as well. So this very self-awareness will charge all these attitudes. So it's rather about adding more wonderment, seeing grace in little things, in little gestures. You cannot really feel grace. You cannot experience synchronicities unless you are open, present. So start enjoying this sense of presence. Yes. Just trying to control ourselves, to be concentrated all the time or for long periods of time, will create a kind of struggle and the sense that this is not working for us. So we do them with a sense of playfulness, always. These practices, the awareness of the breath, sitting on a chair, with a sense of playfulness. It's an awareness there. And then also allow yourself to forget. So do not be hypercritical with yourself. But if we remember the attitude, some seconds after the gesture happened, we can go back and pass again through that doorway. So I just forgot, now I come back and pass. Or you can stop even after you passed. You can still stop and pause and acknowledge the pure I feeling. Yes? So it's a way of associating better the gesture with this mindfulness and further with this self-remembrance, with this higher, with the moon itself, with this higher meaning. Yes? So when we realize that an exercise we used to do consciously is now done without awareness, this is a sign that we need to charge it again with much more attention. So it's about making a commitment to repeat it more consciously. Or in the end of the day, we can evoke such moments of attention and see how efficient the practice really was. Moments when we passed through different thresholds, or moments of remembering the breath. You remember this in the end of the day, and then you see how those moments were more conscious. As I said, most of the events we remember are events in which we were aware. Definitely moments in which we weren't aware, we don't really remember. In designing such work with such circumstantial techniques, start with simpler gestures and increase it gradually when you are satisfied with their results. Now I will give you some examples. Apart from just being aware of the breath, which definitely can be done anytime. In the yogic tradition, this is a practice of the Soham. There is even an Upanishad, the sacred text of this Hamsa, this remembrance of the breath and its meaning. I am that, I am the ultimate. And apart from this, there is an exercise of this threshold crossing. Being mindful whenever you approach a doorway and control your pace, so your first step across the threshold will be with the foot nearest the hinge on the door. So, for example, if the door opens towards the left, you go, or the hinge, you enter, and the hinge is towards the left, you enter with the left, or vice versa. Yes? This is a kind of a little challenging thing that will allow us to bring more attention. So that mindfulness is not just about crossing the threshold. If the hinge is at the left, you go entering with the left leg, and then vice versa. So we just practice this. Doorways are thus will serve us as a remember to be mindful. Ordinary life is full of thresholds to cross. So this can be generalized easily in our daily life. The time of confinement was also a very, very good time for practicing this. Being in the house, passing from a room to another, awareness. If that meaning, sacred meaning, is missing, you can add a mantra. So whenever you pass the threshold and you use the proper leg, you can say Om mentally. But again, it's not about what you say, but it's about that remembrance. It's interesting that even from a psychological point of view, it was observed that people are having issue with passing a different space. A study was done in the University of Notre Dame, and the conclusion was that walking through doorways causes forgetting. People, go from a place to another wanting to do something, and then they forget about this. You take a cup of tea and then you wanted to wash it, but then you don't know why you were in the other room, and so on. So this kind of forgetting is definitely a lack of presence or self-awareness. But what they suggested in that study is that memory is also connecting with an event model. So it's a memory related with some events. I want to do a thing, or I am supposed to do something. While entering a new space is like entering through a doorway is like a time to purge your event model memory. So that memory of event, it's like you free yourself somehow from that concern, because whatever happened in the old room, in the previous room, is likely to become less relevant now that you changed the venues. And this is it's relevant because, yes, entering a new room is like dropping things. It's like entering a new space of presence. So this is a practice you can try and do by itself, and I definitely challenge you or invite you to do this, because again, it's not about just hearing about it, do it. And it's so easy, and it's simply practice it, yes? Or while sitting on a chair. Whenever you sit on a chair, remember this. Or going to the toilet and sitting to the toilet chair. There you can again be present, yes? Also, another exercise that doesn't involve this mechanical approach would be changing the perspective in 3 steps while writing a message, on WhatsApp, or writing at the computer, on a terrace or on the beach, or even in your room. You raise your head, so you stay in your computer. It's like you are in a world, and then raising your head, you're looking in a different place. It's like breaking that limited attention. You enter in a different space. You look in the room, or you look at the beach, nature. You become mindful. It's a zooming out. It's not just becoming mindful of that space, but you realize I was in a dreamlike when I was just looking at the computer or on the mobile, and now something different is there, is zooming out. And then you are aware of the seer. Who am I? So you look, who am I? Again, a practice that can be done so easily, so often, because you have so many times, this tendency to look at devices and zooming out. It's a different space, and then who am I? The seer. Going deeper. Yes. Also, if you have glasses or sunglasses, bring the awareness to them. Yes, you bring the awareness to the sunglass. It is a transparency which still changes the whole way of seeing. We take it as granted. We have them there, but they actually change everything. And then, so you look at them, and then remember the seer, this self-remembrance again. This personality is also like an eyeglass, which can become a conscious transparency in which all perception, thinking, feeling happens. There is related to these glasses, there is a beautiful story in the Jewish tradition. It said that a rabbi, he lost his sight just by reading, but he didn't want to wear eyeglasses while studying Kabbalah. And his disciples, friends, just advised, insisted, and he never took a glass. And then when they asked him, why are you doing so? He just confessed, I don't want anybody to be between me and God. Because these sacred books are seen as the very expression of God. And then you don't want anything. So even some glasses, which we take as granted are like a filter. But these filters are also psychological. So you just observe. So for the moment, we stop this presentation of such practices. So I give you already some themes for some homework, and I'm waiting for feedback from you. So how this is working and if there are questions. And before going to the next topic about this psychological flexibility and this pendulum, the swing principle and centeredness, if there are questions. So if you have any questions, you can just raise your hand and just ask. I'll allow you to, or you'll be allowed to speak. So there is a question: in order to make wise choices in life, how do we find answers to existential and daily life questions by ourselves without regarding to what others say or once said? Again, this is about learning this centeredness, about rooting in ourselves. So the question or the answer to such a question is not a preset answer. It's not that you need to have a set of questions or a set of answers for your life situations. Here comes the spontaneity, here comes this wisdom of the heart. But it comes just when we are not, it's not about discovering something. It's rather about taking away what stops this naturalness, this wisdom of being, this wisdom of presence. And then you act according to the situation, not according to your reactivity or fears or projections or jealousy. And it's just a fact. You observe it as a fact. And you can do this when you drop You learn to drop these personal stories in this beauty of presence, again and again, in this self-awareness. Another question: when do we know we are egoic presence? So when to drop the technique, when we are faking presence? For the moment, I wouldn't stop or be stuck in this to just ask theoretically, or oh, maybe I'm just doing this in a faking way, or it's a faking presence, and so on. First, learn this presence, learn this attention, mindfulness, which in itself is not necessarily that ultimate presence. The awareness of the breath. Just explore. While cooking, look how often you lose this awareness of the breath. Just explore. It's a topic for everybody to just look. And you come again and again. You can even come to counting the breath while you are cooking. Counting the breath from 1 till 7, then from 1 till 14. And then again. And see how much thoughts are taking you. And then you'll understand that, yes, the attention, this lack of mindfulness, is an issue. And rather to just fight with thoughts is again about this learning to stay in this stillness of being. Learning that nirodha, this dissolution. So you are acting, you are cooking with the same sense, with the same teachings of the fish. No? Things are appearing and disappearing. The sound of the gong is dissolving into stillness. And it is this presence, so the presence simply blossoms itself or by itself when we allow that happen, when we are not again obsessed or stay stuck in the ego presence. So once again, this attentiveness on the breath is like a gateway. Stops us being identified with thoughts. Why is so difficult to stop, to keep on counting the breath? Because there are so many other thoughts that are coming. So when we manage to just detach from such thoughts and be aware of the breath, then of course it's like a spaciousness that is created there. And then the presence is blossoming naturally. So try in this way. Are there other questions? If not, yes, it's like raising the hand. Luis. Yes, Luis, you can speak. Can you speak? You need to unmute yourself. Or if not, Remus.
Yes.
Yes,
Hi.
Remus. Hi. Hi, Remus.
Hi, Sahaja.
Hi.
Just a small clarification, please.
Yes.
About that 3 phases.
Yes.
You mentioned the actually I'm not very clear about how should I move from the second stage to be aware of the gesture, and uh, to the third stage. What that means? That means that I have to add some feelings, some value.
Yes, it's a matter of, it's a more subtle aspect. It's about finding that deeper meaning. So it's about connecting that gesture or that attitude of awareness with that sacred meaning. For example, even in Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, um, recommendation is giving to meditate on Aum while remembering its ultimate meaning, or meditating on Ishvara, or realizing that is that sacredness there. So you can say just some words, and a word is just a word, or it's just a repetition. It can be mechanical, or you can be aware, you can say the word with awareness, but this is not enough, because that should bring also a transfiguration, a sense of openness to the sacred. And this is the third step. It's that openness to pure being, to this pure presence. So this is a movement which is still done with an availability. Of course, you may not have in a conscious, controlling way the whole capacity to, open to God, but at least you remember that. Yes. So once again, I pass the door. No, I am conscious of passing the door, or I am breathing. I am aware of the breathing. This is the second stage. Yes, breathing, the mechanical thing. The second stage is I am aware. I'm aware of the breath. So what? So what? But I can, with this, can associate a meaning, like in the Shaivist tradition. This is the movement of creation and absorption of the universe. It's like a recreation and expansion of the universe. So this is the
Yes, yes,
sacred meaning which I give to this. I go, I expand, I manifest myself, and then I am absorbing with inhalation. Or passing a threshold, I am aware of passing the threshold, but then entering this new space, a new room, still is for me a remembrance, love. This is
yes, yes.
an association which I create consciously, yes? So I'm opening, and it's a commitment. I may not feel totally love or deeply, because I still have some limitations, but I keep the openness to it. And we will speak about this later, maybe not this tonight, but we will speak about this capacity of feeling unconditionally love, no matter what circumstances are there. But anyhow, till then, it's just this openness. Yes,
Yes.
yes,
Yes, yes. For example, I felt when I did the exercise together, the first exercise to be aware about the breath, uh, first step, I was confused because it was too difficult to be focused on the breath and in the same time to be focused on what you said. And but after a while, I tried to relax more, and I think because something nice happened, and my tremor of the heart started, and was quite easily to do the same thing in the same time, actually to be aware of the breath and in the same time to be aware to listen what you said.
yes, yes, it's true. It's true, because indeed it's a matter of being rooted. As I said, this being rooted in a stillness of being makes this happen much easier. It's a feedback, as I said, a feedback which is a feedback in faith. So if I'm trying to control just this and try in a just contracted way to be aware of the breath while I'm speaking, then yes, it's hard. But when that is intimately connected with a sense of being, I'm speaking, and at the same time there is this sense of presence. And that flow of being is just pointed to by the breath. So the breath in itself is just a way of remembering this. Yes? Yes? Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Luis, there is still a question or not? Okay. If there are no other questions, still we can go a little bit and start a topic which is a topic which definitely will go on maybe few satsangs, about this psychological flexibility and spiritual centeredness. The principle of the swing of the pendulum, how we can come slowly from this yes and no, from these extremes of life, more and more to this centeredness. How to learn to go from extremes of attachment, like, dislike, attraction, repulsion, slowly to a sense of centeredness of being. In general, it is important to begin to observe how we behave, how we act in our daily life. If we have no idea how mechanically we act, we cannot really speak about a real inner transformation. Because of this, as I said, these practices of self-awareness and then the recollection, the zooming out attitude, will bring a different perspective about ourselves, leading to this pure I feeling, this remembrance, that sense of peace you were speaking about, Remus. And that brings us to a real reference point from where to start, actually. And this reference point is ourselves. Otherwise, we have no idea from where to start, and we are simply limited by subconscious tendencies, repetitive unconscious behaviors, false images about ourselves, those buffers we are speaking about, and so on and so on. If you want to change something outside you, start by changing yourself. It's like in that saying, be the change you want to see in the world. That means starts from inside. And with this, we'll start speaking about this idea of yes and no, of like and dislike, or raga and dvesha, attraction and repulsion, which in the yogic tradition are main causes of suffering. Kleshas are named causes of suffering, and apart from ignorance and ego, which is the effect of this ignorance, then, so it's like Patanjali, for example, speaks about this ignorance, avidya, as the main thing, then ahamkara, the ego sense, and then this raga dvesha, attraction and repulsion, yes and no, like and dislike. And then this is pretty much all that these causes of suffering are for a human being. Another one, the fear of death, he said, but this is all. This is all that pushes us in such limitations. And we will speak later about this and how we can, because actually, like an aesthetic appreciation is not something bad in itself. Bad is the grasping, and we will speak about this. But I would like to start with a short poem by Rumi. He said, God turns you from one feeling to another and teaches by means of opposites so that you have two wings to fly, not one. God turns you from one feeling to another and teaches by means of opposites so that you have two wings to fly, not one. We need two wings, and this means what? This means an integration. This means not denying something, but using both wings. Yes? Our mechanical part, which is our structure of thoughts, emotions, feelings, can work only in this frame of yes or no. It is either yes or no. This brings a brutal division between like and dislike, yes and no, attraction and repulsion, and so on. We can even speak about materialism of such dualistic emotions, which lack a subtlety of this spontaneity, of this intimacy, of this art, inspiration, grace, excitement, enthusiasm, this God within enthusiasm. This enthusiasm is not about just yes and no in this brutal way. And that rigidity, as we will see, it's limiting that ineffable. And Maya, this Maya, it's a Sanskrit word which means illusion. Maya comes from the root ma, which is the Sanskrit root of matri, which means to measure. So Maya is the one in which the measurement exists. So all the world, outside and inside, and this outside, inside is in itself a division, yes? And inside, yes and no, like and dislike, and all these are divisions. And this is the rule of the phenomenal world. So this is the world, the rule of Maya, of illusion. Because the mind is trained to function like this. We are, for some reason, yes, for logic, for mathematical reasons, we operate in yes and no. But these are just some models, some mathematical models. And the model is not what we are. So the map is not the territory. So we are just deluded by the fact that, yes, the science works with this binary logic, with this digital 0 versus 1, and the mind tends to function like this, like a machine in this binary logic with yes versus no. So digital refers to this information expressed as a series of digits, 0 and 1. And it's the same with all our existence. People discuss, argue, mostly in terms of yes and no. I adhere to this belief, to this faith, I believe in that or not, and so on. But at the heart level, beyond Maya, this contradiction of yes and no does not exist. Because in the infinite space of pure awareness, there are no contradictions. And this is another way of saying that there is no contradiction, no duality in God. When there is no yes versus no, or either yes or no, there is a union of the two, a yes and no. And our ordinary thought and language utterly fail here. But this doesn't mean that we cannot open to this. Even mentally, we start speaking about this so-called paralogical thinking, which is a different way of thinking, or an openness in intelligence. Hakim Jami, who was a great Sufi poet, he lived in the 15th century, said, "Abandon boasting of intellect and learning, for here intellect is corrosive and learning is foolishness." There is indeed a domain in which that centeredness includes, doesn't exclude the opposites. And we will see that, yes, even in parts like this Advaita, Vedanta teachings, in which people are speaking about neti, not this, not that, denying the word or seeing the word as Maya, still this is, yes, a strong no to materiality or to the phenomenal world, in order to balance somehow and to come to that yes of the spirit. But this is still a part of this balancing, which is a part of the path in itself, is not describing the ultimate reality. And this is, here is the confusion sometimes, because even in this path of neti, of not this, not that, in the end everything is integrated. Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma, which means all of these are indeed Brahman. So in the end, that integration, no yes versus no, is obtained. So that ultimate reality, the spiritual heart, is not dualistic. But till there, even on a spiritual part, we can use this yes or no, or we can embrace yes, we say yes to our principles, we say no to our attachments, so we can go in this yes and no on different levels, and then, letting go of the letting go, fana al-fana in the Sufi tradition, you say, even that attitude which we grasp or we consider that is a yes there, even that comes to a neutral point, or comes slowly to that centeredness. Somehow it is in the very expression of attachment to always reject one side of a situation in favor of the other side. Yes, it is this nature of the discursive mind to take sides all the time. On the other hand, we also speak about people who don't have strong opinions, and then we tend to consider these people as weak. Anyhow, this, of course, confusion in itself is not a superior solution, is not that solution of integration. Confusion is just a constant paralyzing oscillation between a strong yes and a strong no, and then the confusion. So we divide ourselves into opposites domains as the Maya, illusion, measurement, separation involves. And we continually hypnotize ourselves by believing that a thing surely must be either true or not true, or that person is either good or bad, and so on. So at this level, we have no idea how to bring the opposites together, how to have a unifying solution at this level of the mind. Yes? We don't know yet of this so-called paralogical thinking, in which yes and no together, this seeing in wholeness, can be understood. There is indeed the principle of, in logic, this principle of excluded third, or the excluded middle. In the Latin is the principium tertii exclusi, or tertium non datur, which means the third is excluded, or the third possibility is not given. No third possibility is not given. It's either yes, no, or no. But this is a law, again, a law of the mind, of the rational mind, which can function, as I said, in logic, as a mathematical model, is very good there, but not in life. It's a limited model, which can function. It's an approximation in some domains, but definitely not in the wholeness of being. God is not a mechanism of yes and or no. Yes, and even further, we speak about this duality between the heart and the head, the mind and the heart. But even this duality, mind-heart, which appeared in many Western philosophies since quite a long time, is limited. It's a quite limited view. We still use it as out of a convention and for didactical reasons, but just to consider this. An emotion is not just an emotion, and a thought is not just a thought. The mind is not separated from affectivity. Any idea can have its pathos, its fire. Yes, an idea can be passionate. You can express it in a passionate way. So it has an emotional support, or is, added there an emotion to that idea. And then on the other, and also sometimes actually people with just ideas, with just some ideas, can be very agitated or even more hysterical than people who have just emotions, or mostly emotions. On the other hand, emotions can be very well structured. We can be able to express our emotions beyond just tears and dramas. Yes. So, and then even that absorption of an emotion, or that sense of joy, or in that nirodha, or dissolution of a perception associated with an emotion, the beauty of the sunset, and then stillness. All these are showing how an emotion is not just, a dramatic thing, while the mind is just a cold, rational thing. There is a mixture. And even if we go further, biologically, emotions have also a projection on the brain as well. Yes? And even this convention, in our time, we still say that the emotions are connected with the heart, and the mind or thoughts are connection with the heart, with the mind, and with the brain. But emotions are also connected with the brain. Yes? And it's interesting to know that in the old times, for example, in the even for Hippocrates, in the ancient medicine, the roots of the modern medicine, the seat of intelligence was in the heart, specifically in the left ventricle of the heart, and the emotions were associated with the abdominal area. So the mind with the heart, the emotions with the abdomen. Now we consider the emotions with the heart, and then the mind with the head. And still we can see the relativity of all this. So the duality is still something separate, or is separating, which doesn't really describe the fullness and the complexity of being. And while out of structuring you may use such things which, as I said, are still relative. In other times, culturally, it was seen in a different way. But while this can be still used, we should always be aware of their relativity. And then in this pure I feeling, this sense of me, all different emotions, different thoughts, all is integrated, it's me. All these thoughts, emotions are about me. And it's a sense of presence, of nostalgia related to me. And in that totality, then, going further, it's just this pure I feeling. There, all these dualities are dissolved. Therefore, in the space of our soul, things are infinitely more comprehensive and inclusive. We make a dogmatic yes or a dogmatic no, but experience shows that this one-sided solution doesn't offer us a chance to escape from this game of Maya. Only with an attachment to our ideas, we cannot wake up. We cannot wake up. And as Bernard Shaw said, life does not cease to be funny when people die, any more than it ceases to be serious when people laugh. This is suggesting exactly this integration. People die and still life is funny. People laugh and still life is so sober. We will conclude with that statement of Antonio Machado: between living and dreaming, there is the third thing. Guess it. I feel it's enough of fingers tonight. Let's put the finger apart and go looking for the moon. Let's conclude with a short moment of self-awareness. Close your eyes. Be aware of the breath. Of short pauses after inhalation and after exhalation. Remain in the stillness of being. Keeping on seeing with the heart, with this vastness of being. This love. We conclude meditation now. Satsang.